Okay, so I've fallen way behind. Well, kinda. Because technically, this is a 12 days of book club miss. It's like the 12 days after Christmas, technically, is when you're supposed to do it. But I was trying to do the 12 days leading up to Christmas. But then things got way too hectic and I didn't feel like reading and things happened and I fell behind. So I just finished day 7 and I'm going into day 8. So I finished it on my lunch break at work. I started reading the story, probably about half the story last night before I went to bed. And then I read the second half on my 30-minute lunch break at work. And now I'm ready to open the present that comes with it. So this story was my least favorite I've read so far, and it confused me. That's why I didn't like it, is because I was so confused. The story is called The Lessons Carried Forward by Jamie Perrault. And I think the main reason it confused me is that the main character referred to themselves as them or their, like those type of pronouns. And they never once said that they were he or she. They were a them or their. I've never read a book like that before, and I've never had that opportunity to talk like that. And to me, in English, them and their means multiple people. It's hard for my brain to grasp that it's just one person that's calling themselves a them or a their or whatever. And so it's just really hard for me to read, and I was just so confused, and never once said he or she. It didn't describe what they looked like at all. So normally when I read a story, I picture the person in my head. Sometimes it gives a little bit of description, maybe says they have blonde hair, brown hair, dark eyes, skin color. The only thing it told me was age, which I think was 38, and that they were them. And that's it. So I couldn't picture anything in my head when I was reading, so it was kind of hard for me to, follow it. I was just so confused about what was going on exactly. The person, the main character, their name is Fallon, which is another weird name I've never heard of before. So that made it even more difficult to kind of figure out what a Fallon, Faollan, and their parents have both passed away. They're 38 years old. They have a husband named Caleb, that they referred to that as a man, Caleb, and a child, a girl named Cassie, I believe, or Casey. And they never once said whether the main character, gave birth to the girl, or if it's she's adopted, or how that worked. So again, no hints, don't have a clue. I know it shouldn't matter in a way, but it's like when I read a book, I want all kinds of little details. I like description, and this one kind of left a lot of things vague, and I was confused. Okay, what else? So their parents died, and they're with their husband and kid, going through the things, going through their parents' things, and then there's a letter or something like that saying, we kept secrets from you. There's things we want you to know about your past. And they this is why it's so confusing. So this person has tattoos around their wrists that are like leaves and stuff. and they've had them since they were a little kid. So I was like, huh? How is that? Like, little kids don't get tattoos. I don't understand. Like, why would anyone tattoo a little kid? And in the story, they're acting like that's not a big deal at all. Like, that's a normal thing that happens. And I'm like, what? What is going on? And the way they talked and things that were, I was like, maybe this is like a futuristic story. Maybe this is taking place in the future because kind of the way they're acting. Um, and then I thought maybe this person, the main character, is a robot. And then I was like, okay, no, it's not a robot. I don't get it. I was so confused. And then in the letters or the papers or whatever that their parents left, it said to follow these instructions and get more tattoos added on to your tattoos, and that will reveal something about you. I was like, what? This is like fantasy world above my head, I don't get it. And their husband, Caleb, is, I guess, has skills to do these type of tattoos. So he was like, do you really want this or not? Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, they start dropping little hints here and there to make me think, okay, this is like a fairy tale world in a way. Because they're talking about fae, like fairies and witches and things like that. I'm like, okay, if you had talked like that from the beginning, I wouldn't be so confused. Now I know, because it's a short story and it doesn't tell you anything going into it. So some of these stories are modern day. Some of these stories take place a long time ago. Some of these stories are fantasy world. So it's hard to know what you're getting into. And from the title, I couldn't tell. So finally, about halfway through, I started to get it, that it's like a fairy tale kind of world, like a made up world where there's magical people, magical folks, and creatures and things like that. And this person was adopted when they were a small child. They, as their husband's starting to put the tattoos on them, I guess they're magical tattoos, and they start to remember things as the tattoos are being made, and it triggers memories, and they start flooding back of when they were a little kid. They had a different father. He was really like mean and cruel, and they were, I guess, as a small child, they were bit by a werewolf, because their father was like a big crusader against werewolves. He hated them. He wanted them dead or whatever. So a werewolf went and bit his child. Their original dad was like against magical people and creatures and stuff, and he was against the werewolves. So this werewolf creature guy came and bit his child as I think there was another child too, like they had a sister or something. They bit them as revenge to turn the children into these werewolf creatures. And the father hated it, and he hated his children for this, and they were like abominations. So he found a witch that could do a spell, and he took his child to the witch, and that's when they put the tattoos around the wrist, and they were in the process of doing the tattoo. They didn't finish it all the way whenever these two other people that were kind of friends of the magical people and wanted to protect them and thought what this guy's doing to this child is wrong. So they kind of interrupted it, took the child, and adopted it and raised it as their own. But the tattoo had been done enough that the child no longer, they were just like a human, and they weren't able to access that werewolf part of them. But I guess the parents did research, or the parents couldn't do a reverse type spell at that point of time to make them a werewolf again, because they wanted to reverse it and make them what they're born, or what they naturally are. I guess they weren't born that way, they were made that. But anyways, they were gonna reverse it, make them a werewolf again, but be accepting of them. But they said they're a small child, their body won't be able to handle it, and they might die. So we'll wait until they're older to do this, and it will be their choice. And so now they've passed away. I don't know if it even says how. And this person's discovering all this, and if they finish these tattoos, they will be able to be a werewolf again. So their husband is like, is this really what you want? And they're like, yeah, I feel like this is what I want to be. This is what I'm meant to be, or whatever. So he finishes it, and they grow hair, and they become this werewolf. But it's not like the movies. I guess they're like a nice werewolf, kind of like Twilight or something. And their child comes up to them and like hugs them and everything. They're like covered in hair and they're all wolf-like, but then they're able to like suck it in, and the hair retracts and they turn back into a human again. But they have to be very careful to try to control their werewolfness. And they're a college professor, so they're like, we can keep this secret, but from the world, because they talk about how, they can't be themselves in the world, and, magical people, anything like that, mythical type creatures, if they have to hide from the humans, because the humans will want them dead, and they do not like them. To me, it seemed like it was sort of a, like there was more to the story, like it was in the guise of a fairy tale type story, but I feel like they were making like a social commentary on the world, like how, LGBTQ people can't really be themselves in the world or whatever, and they're shunned and this, that, and the other. I feel like that's what it was kind of trying to symbolize, and that it's better to just be yourself. It wasn't my favorite story. It was confusing to me. Probably be better if it was like a longer, or if I was warned going into it, if I'd read some sort of little synopsis, or if it was a longer story, if I knew what I was getting into and reading first, instead of going in completely blind. And I didn't know if it was fantasy or some sort of future world or post-apocalyptic type world, or I was confused at first, and it took me about halfway or a little over halfway through the story before I started to catch on. Okay, but it was still really hard to read with the them and theirs pronouns and things like that, because I'm just so used to saying he and she and, So when it got to the part about the gift, I am pretty sure it's going to be a book of some kind, because it says Fallon pulls the first book from the box, running their fingers over the familiar cover and inhaling the scent of many a childhood night spent sneaking books they were supposedly too young for from their parents' shelves. Flipping through the book, Fallon waits for the pages to open to one of their favorite passages. Okay. So, I'm pretty sure it's a book. It feels like a book, which I'm happy about because I love books. Books are my fave. I need to hurry up and unwrap this sucker, because after this, I have to go pick up Em from school. She's back to school today. First time since Christmas break. Okay. Ugh. Book. She Wouldn't Change a Thing. A novel by Sarah Adlaka. Would you change fate even if it means losing what you love? A mind-bending story. I hope it's not as mind-bending as that short story was. Yeah, pretty cover. But yeah, it's a book. It's a book. It's a book. When 39-year-old Maria Forceman wakes up in her 17-year-old body, she doesn't know how she got there. All she does know is she has to get back to her home in Beanville, Mississippi, to her job as a successful psychiatrist, and most important, to her husband, daughters, and unborn son. How do you get back to your unborn son? It's like, I was pregnant, now I'm not pregnant. But she also knows that in only a few weeks, a devastating tragedy will strike her husband's family. Can she change time and still keep what it's given her? Exploring the responsibilities love lays on us, the complicated burdens of motherhood, and the rippling impact of our choices. She Wouldn't Change a Thing is a dazzling debut from a bright new voice. That sounds interesting. Okay, I gotta go. I gotta go right now. Bye.